So, back in 1963, James Baldwin drops this book, The Fire Next Time. And it's not just a book. It's part memoir, part essay, and yeah, it is all fire. It completely rips into the subject of race in America, and it doesn't ease you in. Nope, it starts with a bombshell accusation.
Right out of the gate, Baldwin just lays it all out. This is the core idea of the whole book, and you really have to let that sink in. He's not talking about just not knowing something. He's talking about a willful, deliberate choice to look the other way, and he's calling that choice a crime.
All right, so let's dive into this first part, the crime of innocence. This is where we really unpack what Baldwin's getting at with this idea that challenges how a nation thinks about itself. You know, we all think we know what innocence means, right? Well, Baldwin just flips that whole idea on its head. For him, innocence isn't something passive, it's an action. It's the choice to, in his words, destroy hundreds of thousands of lives and do not know it, and do not want to know it. It's like putting up a shield so you don't have to face a terrible truth. And here's the consequence of that so-called innocence. It's not just a crime against the oppressed, it's also a prison for the oppressors. Baldwin is saying that by refusing to really understand their own history, white Americans are actually trapped by it. They can't be free until they face it. Now, you might think this is all just high-level philosophy, but for Baldwin, it was deeply personal. To get why he reached these conclusions, we have to go back to his youth in Harlem, when he was just a teenager desperately trying to find a safe place to land. I mean, just try to imagine being 14 and this is your world. It was a place of constant danger and humiliation. He's watching his friends get lost to addiction and despair, and he knows that just working hard isn't going to save him. He realized he needed an angle, an escape hatch, what he called a gimmick, just to survive a future that felt like it was already written for him. So what was that gimmick? What was his escape route? The church. He felt like he was caught between a rock and a hard place, the dangers of the street on one side and this crushing, racist society on the other. The pulpit, well, it looked like the only safe harbor in a storm. He says he was hurled into it. Not a gentle stroll, but a desperate leap for safety. Okay, so he found his fortress. But that safety turned out to be an illusion. The walls he'd built for himself inside the church, they started to crumble. And this was a massive turning point in his life.
You know, once he got inside, once he was behind that pulpit, he saw something pretty shocking. All that spiritual energy, it just seemed to evaporate the second the service was over. He realized the love and salvation they preached was, as he put it, just a mask. And underneath, the same old despair and hatred he was trying to run away from in the first place.
And then came the moment that really broke it for him. The core message was supposed to be, love everybody. Simple enough, right? But then he finds out there's a huge asterisk. He was told, point blank, that that command, well, it didn't apply to white people. For Baldwin, that was a contradiction he just couldn't stomach.
So, what did this all add up to? He came to the conclusion that the church wasn't offering any real freedom. If the same hatreds and divisions of the world were just going to be copied in the afterlife, what was the point? Was heaven just going to be another segregated ghetto? For him, that wasn't liberation. It was just trading one cage for another.
So he leaves the church, but his search isn't over, not by a long shot. And it leads him to something completely different, something powerful, and, well, really controversial. The Nation of Islam, and a dinner with its leader, Elijah Muhammad. And man, the contrast here could not be more stark. On one side, you have the Christianity he just left, with its conditional love and its focus on suffering now for a reward later. On the other side, you have this doctrine that just flips the whole script. White people are devils. The black man is divine. God is black. You can just imagine, for people who'd been steeped in despair, this was an incredible source of pride and power. And here's the thing. Baldwin heard some hard truths from the Nation of Islam that really resonated with him. He agreed completely with this point. From their perspective, all the calls for nonviolence weren't about morality. They were a tactic demanded by white society to protect its own power and comfort, to make sure nothing really changed. But even with those truths, he couldn't sign up. He just couldn't do it. And the reason why is so important. He looked at their ideology and he saw the exact same logic of the white world he was fighting against, just in reverse. It was still built on racial supremacy and division. For Baldwin, you just don't fight hate with more hate. That isn't liberation.
Okay, so where does that leave us? He's rejected the church. He's rejected the Nation of Islam. What's left? Well, this brings us to the very heart of the book, to his final, profound, and deeply challenging conclusion for America.
Just let that question hang in the air for a second. It's probably his most famous line ever, and for good reason. He's looking at the whole civil rights movement and asking this fundamental question: what are we actually trying to integrate into? What's the real value of getting a seat at the table if the entire house is on fire?
So what's his answer to the burning house? You might be surprised. It's love. But hold on, this is not the cheesy, sentimental kind. For Baldwin, love is a radical, active force. It's tough, it's a quest, a daring. It's the courage to rip off the masks we all wear and finally see each other and our shared reality with total honesty.
And this is his final thesis, the core of his argument. We are in this together. There's no separate escape. Black and white Americans are bound to each other, and the freedom of one is totally impossible without the freedom of the other. The only way to save the burning house is for everyone to embrace this difficult, transformative love and finally take an honest look at America. And he ends with the spiritual that gives the book its title. It's both a prophecy and a warning. Remember the story of Noah? God gave the rainbow as a promise of no more floods, but there was never any promise about fire. Baldwin's message is crystal clear. If we fail to dare everything, to embrace that radical love and truly change, then we are choosing the fire. It's a chilling, powerful warning that is just as urgent today as it was then.